Good afternoon and thanks for joining me. It's May 5th, 2024. 160 years ago today, right here, City Point, Virginia, behind the camera in front of me, Bermuda 100, the Bermuda 100 campaign commenced. Talked about some specific background and the first part of the campaign on earlier videos. I want to take a brief time to talk about the two commanders, General Butler on the Federal side, General Beauregard on the Confederate side. First, General Butler. He was considered a political general. Why? Because he did not have a background in the martial arts. He was born in New Hampshire, but raised in Massachusetts. Served in the legislature, also had run for governor in Massachusetts, but had been defeated. In 1860, he had backed Jefferson Davis, who would later become the president of the Confederacy. Ben Butler backed Jefferson Davis for the nomination for the Democratic Party for the 1860 election. Jefferson Davis did not win that nomination, and Ben Butler eventually supported John C. Breckinridge, who became a Confederate general. He was, again, as I said, a political general, not trained in the martial arts, but was very influential, and there were a number of so-called political generals who were necessary to the war aim. On Lincoln's concern, or of Lincoln's concern and perspective, he wanted those types of generals to be on his side. Lincoln was a Republican, Butler a Democrat. He didn't want to alienate them, wanted them on his side and on the war effort. And in 1863, President Lincoln promoted General Butler to command the Army of the James. Prior to that, General Butler had earned some fame or infamy in New Orleans with certain orders, the most famous, or again infamous of which, was saying that any woman in New Orleans who was found to insult federal troops would be considered a woman plying her trade. As you might imagine, that didn't go over well. So Butler had many defenders as well as many detractors. But for Lincoln's concern, he needed Democrats who were pro-war to be on his side. Lincoln may have also had some concern that Butler would seek the Democratic nomination for presidency in 1864. So in 1863, he was promoted by President Lincoln to command the Army of the James, roughly 30,000 troops, at that point stationed in Hampton Roads, Virginia. On the Confederate side was General Beauregard, a New Orleans Creole, somebody who had been trained in the martial arts, had been essentially in federal service for most of his life before the Civil War. And once the Civil War commenced, commanded Confederate troops during First Manassas, had other commands, and now found himself commanding a region essentially from Richmond down to Weldon, North Carolina, which was, in all intents and purposes, charged with protecting all the vital centers, Richmond, Petersburg, all of the railway and other communication and transportation between that down to North Carolina. And at the start of this campaign, he was in Weldon, North Carolina, when he found out about the landing here. His subordinate, General Pickett, was closer and was the first one to be able to bring together the forces to oppose the landing here. General Pickett, of course, famous, again, or infamous, for the charge that forever has borne his name at Gettysburg, Pickett's Charge. So those are the commanders, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about those. But again, here on the 160th anniversary of the start of the Bermuda campaign, I wanted to give that background. Thank you.